Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. If you are new here, my name is Tonya, and today we're going to go over the 9 books that I read in the month of July and whether I think that you should pick these books up too. So 3 of them I did via audio, and the other 6 were either physical books or ebooks. Overall, it was a really good reading month, but there was definitely some that were higher and some that were lower. So we're going to talk about the books by the way that I rated them. So we're going to start with the book with the lowest rating and then work our way up to the book I gave the highest rating to. So go ahead, grab yourself a cozy drink, sit back, relax, and let's talk about some books. All right, so first up, we're going to talk about Verity Guild by Maya Corland. And I previously have read Maya Corland's Broken Blade series. I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun, fast-paced romantasy. And this one, I didn't enjoy quite as much, but I still did enjoy it. So Verity Guild is a Roman-inspired romantasy. There is a Senate, just like you would have found back in Greek and Roman times. And then there is a temple that also has authority. And our female main character's name is Kara, and she is High Priestess of the temple for the God of Truth. And she has recently become High Priestess. Her father was the High Priest before her, and he has recently passed away. So she was kind of suddenly thrown into this High Priestess position, and she's still kind of trying to learn the ropes of what she's supposed to be doing. And then our male main character, his name is Torin, and he is the Praetorian for the Senate, which is essentially the guard of the Senate. He's supposed to keep all of the senators safe, make sure no harm comes to them, and kind of just proceed over the different Senate sessions, making sure nothing goes wrong during those sessions and that, as I said, the senators are safe. And Kara and Torin do have some past history that is not so great. They aren't really fond of each other. And so this is kind of an enemies to lovers kind of scenario. And it also doesn't help that Kara is hiding her true identity. In this particular republic, there was a king that had blood magic. All of his heirs had this blood magic, and he started off being an okay kind of ruler, and then he lived like 300 years, and as he ruled longer and longer, his kind of lust for power took over more and more, and he ended up being overthrown. He was killed, all of his heirs were killed, or so people thought. Kara is actually his last existing heir. And that's not a spoiler. They tell you that pretty quick in the book within the first, I think it's in the first chapter, but they do let you know that she is this kind of heir in hiding pretty early on in the book. The fact that she's trying to hide, this identity that she has and the kind of bad history she already has with Torin, she just doesn't have a lot of trust for him in general. Well, once a year in this republic, the Senate and the High Priestess, they go up to the former palace and they get locked in for a week so that they can work on voting in new laws, things like that. And Torin also attends this session because he is there to protect the senators. So once everyone gets locked in, people start getting killed off. Torin assumes that Kara must be guilty. Kara is not so sure if it's Torin that's actually doing the murders or if it's one of the other senators. So things kind of just progress from there. It's a locked-in murder mystery. So if you're not a fan of kind of murder mystery settings, this may not be the best book for you. But if you do enjoy murder mysteries, then you may enjoy this book. So this book does end on a pretty big cliffhanger. I haven't decided yet if I am going to continue on to the next book. I'll just kind of see how I feel about it once it comes out. I really feel like whatever's going to happen in the second book could have been combined with this book. This was pretty short. It was under 400 pages, and the ending felt rather abrupt. So the book definitely could have been longer. I don't know what all plays out as the series goes on, but it seems like this book could have been extended and then maybe, whatever's happening in the second book combined into this book as well. But overall, good plot, fast pacing, and likable but not lovable characters. So then next we're going to talk about the 2 books that I gave 4 stars to, and these books, they are vastly different. The first one we're going to talk about is Sea of Charms by Sarah Beth Durst. As I mentioned, I gave this one 4 stars. I had an arc of it, and this book released on July 28th, so you can actually go ahead and pick it up. And this is the 3rd book in the Spell Shop world. It's a pretty popular cozy fantasy that Sarah Beth Durst writes. There's supposed to be a 4th book coming out in this particular world, I believe in January, but these books, they're basically like just a big, warm, cozy hug. They make you feel good. There is a plot, but it's not so intense that, it's like emotionally going to stress you out in any way. And it's just a fun, relaxing read. And I'm not a huge cozy fantasy fan, but I have enjoyed all of the books in the Spell Shop world so far. I would say the first book was my favorite, and then this next book, Sea of Charms. And The Enchanted Greenhouse, it's been my least favorite so far, but even being a least favorite, I think I still gave it like 3.75 stars. So it was still a pretty good book. And in this book, we're following Marin, who is a supply runner. She sails all over the kingdom, just delivering supplies to people and living her life on the open sea. And Marin was in a bad relationship previously, and it didn't end well. So her heart has been broken and she feels like she can't trust anyone anymore. She's done with love. She's just gonna sail by herself out on the open sea that she loves so much, and that's how she's gonna live out her life. She doesn't need a guy, she doesn't need friends. She just needs to be on her boat by herself, sailing around. Or so she thinks. So even though Marin has resolved that she's just gonna do her sailing by herself on the open sea, she slowly starts to pick up crew members. First, she ends up picking up Perry, who is a sea monster. She saves him off of a rock pile and they become friends, and now Perry travels around with her. Then she ends up picking up Ree, who is a wax myrtle sentient plant who we met in the Enchanted Greenhouse, and Ree loves the sea. So reluctantly, Marin agrees to let Ree come on as a crew member so that he can learn how to be a sailor, because that's like his lifelong dream. And how could you say no to a cute wax myrtle who loves the sea? So they're going about their business, running different supply runs, and they end up going to Elysium, which is the capital city, and a rebellion is happening. And we do hear about this rebellion in the first 2 books as well. This is kind of just Marin's perspective of the rebellion. But they get to Elysium and they go to the conservatory to make a drop off, and we meet Dax, who is our male main character in this book. He is a musician, he is highly thought of, but everyone at the conservatory has basically been keeping him in the dark because they just want him to write music. They don't want him to leave. He doesn't know there's a rebellion going on. Well, things kind of progress from there, and Marin ends up picking up Dax and some of his fellow musicians during this rebellion because it just wasn't safe to be in the city anymore. And things, kind of just progress and move on from there. Marin's working through her trust issues, and, Dax is, of course, super cute, and they have a really lovely, sweet connection with each other. And there's also a whole lot of found family vibes in this book. That was one of my favorite parts of the book, and something that Sarah Beth Durst does really well in all of her books. So if you are looking for just kind of a heartwarming, cozy, easy read, then I would definitely recommend you pick up Sea of Charms. I really enjoyed it, and we'll be reading the 4th book when it comes out next year. Now we're going to talk about the 2nd book that I gave 4 stars to, and that is Meadow Slinger by Rachel Schneider. And this book had the potential to be higher than a 4-star read, but I have actually never felt so betrayed by a book in my life. And that is how it ended up at a 4-star, which 4 stars, still a good rating. I don't actually know though if this is a book that I would recommend to everyone. I'm going to say this book is going to be a maybe as a recommendation, just because there is an event that happens near the end of the book where, like I said, I just felt really betrayed by the writer. And personally, I don't know if that's something I can get over and continue on with the series. Some people may not mind this twist that happens at the end, but for me, it kind of canceled out what I felt for the whole story. And the feelings that I had for our female main character and our male main character and all of the side characters as well, it just changed everything. And it wasn't a feeling that I particularly enjoyed in a book. So yeah, that's kind of what happened with me with Metal Slinger. Up until that point in the book, I was really enjoying it. I thought the story was unique and fast-paced. The magic system was also very unique. I felt like Bryn and Acre, who are female main character and male main character, had really good chemistry, really good banter. And then things went south. And like I said, I couldn't really recover from that. So this is one that I don't know that I could really recommend to you to read, but take my opinion for what you will. If you're someone who doesn't mind kind of a major plot changing twist, you may really enjoy this book. But as I said, for me, it was not the best thing, and I probably will not continue on with the series. So next up, we're going to talk about Heavenly Bodies by Imani Eru. And I gave this book 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed it. The world is unique in the fact that it's very astrology based, and the gods in this particular world are called stars. And we learn early on that our female main character has a prophecy that was told about her, and that is that she is going to fall in love with a star and then she is going to kill them. So, of course, the gods aren't really a huge fan of hearing that this young woman is going to kill one of them, and it results in Alara's entire family being killed. And then she is taken hostage by the neighboring kingdom, where the king wants to use Alara, train her as a weapon, and then have her kill this star so he can benefit. And Alara's kingdom is a kingdom of shadows, it's darkness, and the kingdom that ends up kidnapping her is the kingdom of light. And she ends up training with the son of this particular realm. His name is Enzo, and he has all kinds of light and fire magic, where Alara can do things like she can dream walk, she has shadow magic, and she can cast illusions. And Enzo is going to try to train Alara to make the most of all of her gifts. She hasn't used them a lot. She's been a little sheltered up to this point. But if she's going to kill this god, she kind of has to step it up. And it does start off as enemies to lovers in between Enzo and Alara. But that changes, of course, as the book goes on. I thought they had great chemistry, great banter. And Alara, even though she doesn't have a lot of fighting prowess, she is a strong person. She's willing to stand up for what's right. And she quickly sees that there's probably a benefit for her training to kill the star if she's actually going to survive. There was also some really good messaging in this book about trusting your heart and loving all parts of yourself. So I really enjoyed all of those messages. I thought Imani Eru's writing was just really beautiful without being over the top, and really enjoyed the book overall. Now, the reason I was at a 4.25 star was there was a twist that happened in the end that I really enjoyed, and it brought about just the most amazing connection in between our male and our female main characters. And I just would have liked to have felt that connection and those emotions a little earlier in the book. We definitely got it right at the end. It sets up the second book to be truly amazing, but I still feel like we could have got a little more of that connection and emotional depth before we actually got it. So overall, great book. I will be continuing on with the series, and I'm hoping to get to book 2 before the end of the year because I believe book 3 is coming out in 2027. All right, so now we're going to talk about the 3 books that I gave 4.5 stars to. And the first one we're going to talk about is Daggermouth by H.M. Wolf. And this one was a little bit of a different book for me. It is a dystopian book, but I would also say that it leans towards dark romance. And while I read a lot of romantasy, I don't necessarily read a lot of dark romance. So that was something that was a little different about this book for me. And I will say, even though it is a dystopian book, you don't get a lot of background on how we got to the state of the world that we're currently in. It definitely has more of a tyrant dictatorship feel to it, like a military feel to it, which I really did enjoy. I would have liked just a little more background on, like I said, how the world got to the state it's in. We do learn briefly that there are some other city-states out there, but that's not touched on a ton. And I don't know if maybe that's going to be explored more in future books. But in this particular book, we're basically just staying in one city, and the city's broken down into rings. So you got your poorest people out on the fringes of the city. As you move a little further in, you would have what I would say would be the middle class people. And at the very center of the city, which is called the Heart, that's where you have all of your elites, and they are the people that are in charge, and they definitely live a way better life than any of the outer rings do. And if you are part of the Heart, then you are required to wear a mask on your face. And this is basically like a power play. No one's allowed to see like your true identity until you get married. If someone sees your face without your mask on and you are not married, then you get executed. So it's kind of an interesting power trip kind of play. The fact that all the elite wear these masks and you never really know who you're talking to and what their true emotions are. So I overall really enjoyed this book. I will say the only reason it wasn't a 5-star read for me is the first probably 20% of the book, I did not like our female main character. Her name is Shadira, and she is a bounty hunter. And at the beginning of the book, she just came off so like, you know, I am only here for one thing, and that's to kill people and earn money, as well as to plot my revenge. And I don't need help from anyone. I don't like anyone. And that attitude, it is not my favorite. It turns me off. I thought at first I was going to DNF the book, but I gave it a little more time, and I am so glad I did, because as the book kind of progresses, once you get past that 20% mark, Shadira, you start to see some different sides of her, and you start to grow to actually care about her. All of the people in this book are very, very morally gray. I wouldn't say that there's anyone in here that would not fall on the morally gray scale, but you learn more about how people have become the way they are, and it brings up some thought-provoking kind of situations where you have to think about what you would become to survive, and what would you deaden within yourself to survive and be able to just make it through day by day, all these horrible things that are happening to you. And this book is quite dark. There's a lot of really hard topics in it, so you will want to check the trigger warnings. The dark is not necessarily all the romance portion. There's just a lot of dark shit that goes down. So definitely look at the trigger warnings and be prepared for that, and make sure you're in a good headspace. But I loved how morally gray these characters were, and how we did get to kind of learn their backgrounds and how they became this way, and the different sides that they each had to each other. And this is a love triangle. We have Shadira, who is our female main character, who, as I mentioned, is a bounty hunter. And she has a relationship with an individual named Ghost, who is kind of one of the rebel leaders out in the rings. She hasn't admitted to them having any sort of relationship, but they do definitely care about each other. And then we have Grayson, who is our other love interest and our male main character. And Grayson is the heir to the president. So his father is the ruler of this city, and Grayson is expected to take his place at some point. And his father is essentially a tyrant, and a lot of how they keep people in line is with public executions, and that's kind of Grayson's current job, is he is the public executioner. And for obvious reasons, people hate him for that. And Shadira ends up taking a contract to kill Grayson, and that's kind of how they meet up, and things kind of, ensue from there. There are a ton of plot twists in this book. So you're going to be trusting people and then not trusting people. And then, you're going to think one thing's going to happen, and then there's a shift, and then you go off on a different path. And the end of this book, diabolical, mind-blowing, one of the best book endings that I've read in a really long time. And it was just so good. And I loved all the dynamics of the different individuals in the book. H.N. Wolf, her writing really portrays emotions well. And that was one of the main things I enjoyed about the book. So definitely would recommend this one. But as I said, it's real dark, so make sure you check the trigger warnings. And then on a completely different note, I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. And this book, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. And this was unexpected for me. I think technically this is a YA book, though the two individuals in it, they're 18 and 19. So I guess it would probably lean more new adult than technically, I would say, YA. So I don't read a ton of YA romance at this point. I am just older, so sometimes the YA books are just a little too young for me. But I didn't feel that way at all in this book. I really enjoyed Rebecca Ross's writing. It's just beautiful, and it conveys descriptions of where you are so well. Like, you feel like you're in the story. And she also does a great job with emotions. You feel connections with all of the characters. So greatly enjoyed this one. It was much better than I anticipated. It definitely has like a star-crossed lovers kind of feel to it. And in this particular world, we have gods who are warring with each other. And the gods that are currently fighting are Inva and Diaker. Don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's how we're going to go. Inva, I would say she is the good god, the one that is trying to help people. And Diaker, he falls on the kind of bad god side. He lives underground, so he lives in the underworld, even though he's not really called like a demon. It just goes into the fact that he is underworld instead of being up above. And Inva, she is under the sky, and she is all things, bright, and she carries people's souls off to a better place when they do pass away. And she comforts people with her music. So they're kind of the opposing sides in this war. And our male and female main characters, Iris and Roman, they are writers, and they're kind of rivals. They're both just starting out at this particular paper, and they're each vying for the same spot as a columnist. So, there's some tension at the beginning, them not really liking each other or understanding each other, but you can tell that they do kind of find each other attractive. And Roman, he comes from a well-off family. It is considered new money. His family is not where they want to be in society, but they are well off, where Iris's family is pretty poor. Her mother has been working at a diner, and her brother ends up going off to war, so there's not a lot of financial support for Iris. She was in school, but she ends up dropping out to try to get this columnist position. So that's kind of the gist of the book. I don't want to go into too much detail about what happens beyond that. I think for me, I went into this book mostly blind, and that was part of what made it special. So I would encourage you, if you have not read this book, to go into it blind as well. And this book is part of of a duology. I do plan on continuing on with the series and would definitely like to read more of Rebecca Ross's writing. So the third book that I gave 4.5 stars to was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and I really enjoyed this book. I read the Shadow and Bones trilogy probably, I would say, like at least 3 years ago. So it's been a hot minute since I was in the Grishaverse, which is kind of just this world that Leigh Bardugo has created. The Grisha are the magic users of this particular world, and Shadow and Bone was the first trilogy in it. And that one, you get a really good background for the politics of the world as well as the magic system. So I personally would suggest reading Shadow and Bone first. You don't have to, but I think you're gonna get a lot more out of Six of Crows if you do read Shadow and Bone first. And the books aren't that long, they're pretty easy reads, but it will give you a lot of really good context for Six of Crows. But it will give you a lot of really good context about the world, which Six of Crows doesn't really go into in that much detail. But as I said, I love this book. It is another kind of heist book, and we're following 6 different individuals in it, and each of those individuals, they're so unique, and they each have something that makes you want to learn more about them. And there's a lot of great chemistry throughout the group. We have Kaz, who is kind of the mastermind of the group. And then we have 5 other individuals that are kind of going to be participating in this heist. We have Inej, who is the Wraith. She's kind of, the thief, the assassin. And then we have Jesper, who is a sharpshooter. Wyatt, who is good with explosives and just can kind of think outside of the box. And Nina, she is a heartrender, so she is a Grisha. And with her magic, she can affect the blood in your body. So, she can stop your heart from beating. She can speed up the pace that it's beating at. That's kind of where her gifts lie. And then we have Mathis, who is a soldier from the Icelands. So we have all these different personalities that come together for this particular heist, and they all have their strengths, and some of them get along with each other better than others. I think Kaz is really the standout. As I said, he is the mastermind. He has had a very rough life and has kind of built himself up in the criminal side of the city, and now has a lot more power and respect within the criminal organizations in the city. And he is just able to read people and predict things in a way that makes him really good at pulling off these heists that no one else could ever pull off successfully. And he does get presented with this opportunity with what will be the most impossible heist with the biggest prize that he's ever done before. And it also gives him a chance for a little bit of revenge, which is something that is a really big deal for Kaz. And that's kind of the gist of the plot, is these individuals are going off to do this heist. And of course, things happen along the way. And it's just a really enjoyable, fast-paced book with lots of plot twists, characters that draw you in. There is chronic pain rep in this book as well. I would highly suggest reading the acknowledgments at the end from Leigh Bardugo. I thought it was really interesting to hear how she has chronic pain issues herself and how she brought that to light in this book through Kaz. So definitely read that little author's note at the end. But yeah, just really enjoyed the book. It's the first book of a duology, so I will definitely be continuing on with the series. And don't plan to wait 3 years like I did in between Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows. All right, guys, so this is future Tonya here. I just realized I forgot to give you my thoughts on one of the books that I read in July, and that was A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. That's the little novella that comes in between the 3rd and the 4th book. And I did a reread of it as we're getting closer to October, when the 6th ACOTAR book's going to come out, and love this book just as much this time as I did last time. I gave it 5 stars, which is super high for a novella, but I am not shy about handing out 5 stars for novellas, because to me, like, with this one, or Holly and the Belladonna series, or Leviathan and the Echo Saga. These are all just little extra chances for me to spend time with some of my favorite characters in a book series. So I gave this one 5 stars. I love the fact that we get to meet back up Era and Rhysand, Cassie and Azriel, you know, the whole gang, and see just little pieces of their life in peace. And I really enjoyed that after all the heaviness that came in book 3 with the war. So it was nice just to hang out with the characters again. And as I said, to spend a little peacetime with them and getting to see them actually enjoying their lives. Then lastly, we're going to talk about the 1 5-star read that I had in July, and that was The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, which is the 3rd book in the first Mistborn trilogy. And this was definitely a case of saving the best book for last. The first 2 books in the series I gave 4 stars to. This book was an easy 5-star. I knew it was going to be a 5-star probably from about halfway through the book. I just felt like it really brought this first trilogy together, and there was a lot of twists along the way. It did have me hooked from the beginning. The prologue had the best first line ever. I'm not going to read it and spoil it for you, but definitely read the prologue. It just set the tone for the book, and I was hooked from beginning to end. If you're not familiar with the Mistborn saga, we are following a group of thieves as they try to overthrow an evil ruler. And while they are doing that and on this path, they learn that there are bigger problems than just this Lord Ruler who they're trying to kill. There are things happening that are going to affect the whole realm, and it ends up being a much bigger rebellion than they ever could have dreamed. And what Brandon Sanderson does so well in the Mistborn saga is it's a very unique magic system. The people who have the magic are called Misties or Mistborn, depending on how much magic they have. And the magic system is metal-based, so you either push or you pull on certain metals to create a reaction. And some of those are physical things like, you're jumping higher or you're flying or things of that nature. And some are mental things where you're affecting people's emotions. And most people can only use one metal. And if you end up being able to use more than one metal, then you're something called a Mistborn, who is like essentially the ultimate warrior. And I had never read about a magic system like this before, so really enjoyed that throughout the book. And also, Brandon Sanderson does an amazing job at writing fight scenes that go along with this magic system. And that was some of my favorite things from the first 2 books was the magic system and the fight scenes. But what I was missing was an emotional connection with the characters. I did really like all of the characters in this book, but I wasn't sold on the fact that I love them. And so that kept me at that kind of 4-star range for the first 2 books. Our main female character's name is Vin, and we meet her as a young thief who is on the streets, and she gets taken in by a group of thieves who are plotting to overthrow the Lord Ruler. And she learns that she is, in fact, a Mistborn. And so throughout the books, we travel along with Vin as she's learning about her powers and learning to trust again. And there was some emotional connection there, but it just wasn't deep enough, in my opinion. And then we hit book 3 and all the emotions came into play. So we got to see a lot more emotional depth from Vin and her love interest. We started to see their connection in book 1, and that has progressed throughout the books. But to me, I never really felt their relationship had like true meaning to it. But we definitely got that in the 3rd book We also, from a lot of our side characters, got to see a lot more emotional depth there. One of the characters, Spook, he had a standout story in this book, as well as Sazed, probably saying that wrong, but that's how I'm going to say it. We got to really go on a journey of grief with him throughout this book. This book, out of the three, definitely had the most emotional value to it, and I think that just made everything tie together. The magic system was still great. The battle scenes were still great. There was amazing plot twists that happened all over the place. The ending of this book, it will blow your mind up. You will not believe what happens at the end, but all of those things just tied together in this last book to bring it from being a good series to a great series. So would highly recommend. I think the Mistborn Saga is actually a great place to start with epic fantasy if you haven't read it before, just because Brandon Sanderson's writing is pretty easy to read. And in the first book in the series, you're basically staying in one city. It's not until you start progressing through the books that the world kind of opens up. So I do think this would be a great series if you're new to Brandon Sanderson and just new to epic fantasy in general. But yeah, surprisingly loved this last book way more than I thought I would. Now I just have to figure out what I'm supposed to read next in the Cosmere. There's a lot of different recommended reading orders out there for Brandon Sanderson's books, so I got to try to kind of figure out where I'm going to go from here. But definitely will be continuing on with the Mistborn series, as well as picking up some of Brandon Sanderson's other books. So that was the 9 books that I read in the month of July. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on them as we chatted our way from the lowest rated book I had to the highest rated book I had. Let me know down in the comments if you read any of these books and what you thought of them, or just what your favorite book was that you read in July. I always love to interact with you in the comments and see your thoughts on the books I've read or hear about books that you're reading. So definitely leave me a comment down below. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. Take care, keep reading, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye.